Shalom. The title on tonight is The Devil, His Angels, and Their Sin. This is part 4. This is the final installment of this lesson. We talked about the sin in the beginning. We talked about the devil, the angels that fell, and the offspring thereof. We hinted on it in the last lessons, but I'm really going to go in deeper on the offspring of those fallen ones, those angels that sinned, according to the book of First Peter and Jude and elsewhere in Scripture. We're going to talk about the giants. Before we get into it, I think I need to preface this lesson by saying there are many in the Israelite community as well as the Christian community that do not even subscribe to the ideas of the angels falling, things of that nature. But when you look at the text within the Scripture and you look at extra biblical sources that speak to that, whether it be the book of Enoch or any other book, and then you look at the artifacts and you look at the evidence that shows the existence, not only in the primordial age or in ancient times of antiquity, but even modern times, of people that are larger than people that normally dwell, on the earth. You hear reports of people being 8, 9, 10, 15 feet tall, walking around, roaming the mountains, dwelling, going in and out of caves. Today, 2024, you're going to have to give an explanation to that. You know what I'm saying? These hairy ape-like individuals dwelling in caves, dwelling in mountains, eating people, drinking blood. We're going to have to put an explanation to it. And the Scriptures, as well as the extra biblical sources that we will get into, allude to these things and talk about these things. And if you have an open mind, you can start to bridge these things together. Now, I'm not going to act like I have all the answers. I don't. There are things that are out there in our world that we don't fully understand. Only the Creator fully knows what's going on in His creation. But we do have some text. We do have some other evidence that can help us get a grip on these sort of testimonies that we hear from certain people saying that they saw, Sasquatch or things of that nature, or giants. We talked about it last time, the event that took place in the Miami Mall. Seeing 10 and 11 foot creatures come out of a portal, walking through the halls of the mall. And they dispatching all these police cars and shutting down electricity to the block and got SWAT team and all. For kids with sticks? Come on now. You know what I'm saying? We're not simple. We're not stupid. You know what I'm saying? So this lesson really is just going into what the Scriptures say and trying to give an answer to these things. Okay? So, but before we get into Scripture, I want to go to a few articles and read them first. Okay? This article right here, this is recent. Somewhat recent. This is last year, August of 2023. So not too long ago. The Smithsonian, which is a very famous, well-renowned museum in America that collects artifacts and whatnot. It's stationed in Washington, D.C. The Smithsonian is apologizing for how it amassed its vast collection of human remains. Okay, let's read some of this here.
How it amassed?
Amass, meaning to gather together.
Oh, why?
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. We'll start here. Most of the remains of the Post found were collected in the early 1900s under the direction of anthropologist Alice Herdelica. I'm just going to call it Alice H., who sought to advance his now debunked theories that white people were superior to people of color. It was abhorrent and dehumanizing work, and it was carried out under the Smithsonian name. Bunch wrote in an op-ed published on August 20th. As Secretary of the Smithsonian, I condemn these past actions and apologize for the pain caused by H. and others at the institution who acted unethically in the name of science, regardless of the era in which their actions occurred. Okay? So this modern Smithsonian secretary is giving a public apology to the things that were taking place in the early 1900s under European leaders of the museum. Okay? He continued, I apologize too that the Smithsonian is responsible for both responsible both for the original work of H and others who subscribe to his beliefs, and for the failure to return the remains he collected to descendant communities in the decades since. H, who headed the Smithsonian's Physical Anthropology Division from 1903 to 1941, used highly unethical methods to build up the institution's collection of human remains, working with researchers and doctors to acquire them from morgues, hospitals, and graveyards. According to the Post, decades later, very few of the brains in its collection have been repatriated, the Post reports. So a lot of the stuff that they took, they did not give back to the original peoples. Okay, sometimes called the nation's attic, the Smithsonian is the world's largest. Let's hone in on that. The Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. is the world's largest complex of museums, education, and research center. Its museums, mostly located in Washington, D.C., are home to more than 157 million items.
That's a lot of items.
That's a lot of items. More than 157 million items. It's the world's largest collection of museums, all centralized in one area. The National Museum of the American Indian Act, a federal law enacted in 1989, stipulates that the Smithsonian must return the remains of an individual in an expeditious manner upon the request of their descendants or tribe. Since the passage of the act, the Smithsonian has repatriated the remains of more than 5,000 people, Bunch wrote in his op-ed. Let's see if there's any more I want to read. The law also applies to American Indians, Alaskan Natives, and Native Hawaiians, leaving out many other communities whose remains were also taken without proper consent. What does that mean? They stole it. They were stealing remains. They said they were going into graveyards and morgues and hospitals and stealing bones. This is well known. They're only now giving an apology. Well, why am I bringing this up? Why is this even important? Because in one of the last lessons, I talked about the giants, and things of that nature. And I said, why is this being hidden? Because you asked the question. With the Miami mall situation, why ain't this big time news? Like, why ain't this being publicized? Biggest reason being, you can't explain this. You can't explain a 10-foot man. You can't explain a 15-foot man. This don't work into the theory of Darwinism and evolution. You know what I'm saying? And so the Smithsonian is a means to try to cover up real history and falsify history. And let it fit into, what they want history to be. Okay? I'm going to read this next article. Did the Smithsonian destroy thousands of giant human skeletons? All right, so you already got, in 2023, you have the current Secretary of the Smithsonian apologizing for all of the unethical things that the former leader of the museums did in the early 1900s. Stealing bones, not giving them back to certain indigenous communities. Okay, he's having to apologize. These are things that are well known. And they had to pass legislation to make them give it back. And there's still people that saying, hey, we still want our stuff back. This belongs to our community. This belongs to our people. We want this stuff back. Okay? I'm going to read this area right here. A U.S. Supreme Court ruling has forced the Smithsonian Institution to release classified papers dating from the early 1900s that proves the organization was involved in a major historical cover-up of evidence showing giant human remains in the tens of thousands had been uncovered all across America and were ordered to be destroyed by high-level administrators to protect the mainstream chronology of human evolution at the time. Okay? So when you think about the first article we read and the apology, they're not going to go into the depths of why these remains were taken. Now, they mentioned, idea that they wanted to cover up the idea that or further the idea that whites were superior to blacks. So they, I'm sure they did that. They've done it for centuries. But ain't nobody talk about these giant bones, though. You know what I'm saying? Let's read on. The allegations stemming from the American Institution of Alternative Archaeology that the Smithsonian Institution had destroyed thousands of giant human remains during the early 1900s was not taken lightly by the Smithsonian, who responded by suing the organization for defamation and trying to damage the reputation of the 168-year-old institution. During the court case, new elements were brought to light as several Smithsonian whistleblowers admitted to the existence of documents that allegedly proved the destruction of tens of thousands of human skeletons reaching between 6 feet and 12 feet in height, a reality mainstream archaeology cannot admit to for different reasons, claims AIAA spokesman James Cherward. That's some damning evidence right there. Documents that the Smithsonian had under lock and key are resurfacing and saying tens of thousands. Now, how many did it say of artifacts and items that the Smithsonian had altogether? More than 157 million items. It's the world's largest complex of museums, all in Washington, D.C. Okay? I've heard of stories where in Peru, because he talks about North America and South American native tribes and peoples calling for these items and these artifacts, these bones, to be repatriated back to their communities. But I remember hearing about there being excavation dig sites in Peru and finding these large bones. And as soon as they were dug up, as soon as there was like a small little stir about it, immediately the officials from the Smithsonian Museum would show up and confiscate all of the remains and totally take over. Come in with federal and CIA agents and say, look, from this point forward, we're taking over this entire site. Like, wait, get out of here. We're taking over this entire site. And then before you know it, within a couple of days, all those bones and all of that just disappear. This is real. This is real. I open up with that to lead into what the scriptures say. Okay? Because it's easy to say, oh, yeah, there were giants back in the day. There was, but that was back then. No, they don't exist today. Do they? Yeah, they do exist. The scripture didn't say they stopped existing. But it's an easy way to just say, oh, it's folklore. Oh, it's mythology. Oh, it's something way back then, but it ain't happening today. There were all these people, talking about seeing giants. Finding remains. Okay? So, again, I'm not trying to act like I have all the answers. But when we see these things in a modern day, in 2024, we got to give an explanation to where did they come from? Okay? Now, an ordinary man and an ordinary woman can have intercourse and produce a tall child. That's normal. But when you start giving offspring that are 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 feet tall, we got to give an explanation to that. Okay? So first, we're going to go to the book of Numbers, chapter 13, verses 32 and 33. I'm not going to go into the fallen angels and all of that. We did that in the previous lessons of lessons 1 through 3. You can refer to those to get an understanding on that. But we're going to really deal with the giants. Okay, we're going to deal with the giants.
Numbers chapter 13, verse 32.
Hold on one second. Let me get there as well. The book of Numbers, chapter 13, verse 32. Go ahead.
And they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched out unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof. And all the people that we saw in it are men of a great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants.
Salakia, let's pay attention to what is said there in verse 33. The writer is saying, and there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak. When you go into that Hebrew word for Anak, it means long neck. I don't know what that means. Again, I'm not trying to act like I know everything. But we just going to delve a little deeper and just see what the text is saying. So, Anak, the Hebrew word means long neck. So, this family or clan of giants could have had distinguishable long necks. Okay, that's what the word Anak means, the son of Anak. But think about this. Think about this. The sons of Anak. What would that entail? That Anak, this long-necked individual, I guess, had children. And how does any creature have offspring? They procreate through intercourse. Animals and anything else, they procreate by means of intercourse. So there had to be female giants? Or mating with women or something to produce offspring who are giants. But the latter part said, which come of the giants. Which come of the giant. So these sons of Anak, which are described as giants, are said to have come from giants. From a previous race of giants, if you will. Read the rest of the verse.
And we were in our sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight.
So we were in our own sight as grasshoppers. So in comparison to these sons of Anak, we felt like bugs. We felt like grasshoppers. And it said that they viewed us like grasshoppers. Okay? That's not just somebody who's 7 foot tall. That's not just Shaquille O'Neal. All right? This is, we talking about somebody who got Shaquille beat in terms of height. Okay? We talking about an extraordinarily tall individual. And not just one, because a lot of time coming up, being in Sunday school, we think about Goliath. Think about, okay, just one giant. No. There was a race of giants. A nation of giants. Okay? A nation of giants. Was it Jack and the Beanstalk movie that came out? That depicted like a race of giants dwelling in a certain place? I know they also show that in the Disney film, what's it called? BG or something? I forget what it's called. It was based off the Ronald Dahl book where a young girl befriends a friendly giant. But this friendly giant was smaller in stature compared to the larger giants who are more malicious. And they dwelt in this certain region. Right? And it makes you think of what the scriptures talk about. Okay? From there, we're going to go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 2, verses 10 and 11, and then 20 through 22. The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 2, verses 10 and 11, and then 20 through 22.
Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 10. The Emims dwelt therein in times past, a people great and many, and tall as the Anakims.
Okay, so this is the same as what we just mentioned in Numbers 13. The son of Anak, the Anakim, those are the same people. Okay, that's the those that descended from Anak, his giant children. Okay, but it mentions the Emim. The word Emim in Hebrew means, I believe it means fierce. Bear with me. Let me see if I can pull that up. Bear with me, because I just was looking at it. The Hebrew word Emim. Let's see here. The Hebrew word Emim. And it means terrors. That's what it means. Terrors. So it talks about this group of tall people. It says, these Emims dwell there in times past. A great people. Whenever the scripture talk about a great people, it can talk about it in terms of their might or their glory or whatever, but usually that's talking about in multitude, meaning there's a lot of them. Like the children of Israel referred to as a great people. Not in terms of our glory or anything, but just there's a lot of us. The king of Moab, when he went to Balaam and wanted him to curse, he said, this people that dwell over yonder, they're a great people, and they eat up all the grass. They eat up everything. I'm sick of them. They're a great people. It's saying the same thing concerning these giants. A great people, many and tall as the Anakims. And they're referred to as terrors. But go back to Numbers 13. It says that these sons of Anak were giants, and they came from the giants. So there was a lineage of giants. Okay, keep going.
Verse 11. Which also were counted giants, as the Anakims, but the Moabites called them Emims.
So the Emims and the Anakims were both called giants, right? But they were different. They were sort of different. But they were similar in the fact that they were a race of giants. They were a nation of giants. Okay, jump down to verse 20 to 22.
Verse 20. That also was accounted a land of giants.
A land of giants? That's the same thing that we just read about in Numbers 13, that when they went into the land of Canaan, they found there was a land of giants. It wasn't just one person. It was families. Families. It'd be just like this. If you were driving, through the park, like, Genesee Valley Park, a lot of times, what's in the summertime, what's being had over there in the Genesee Valley Park? In the
A little cookout.
Cookout.
A little party.
Party.
Yeah, a little get together.
If it's a larger cookout, what do we call that? Typically a much larger cookout. What do we call that?
I don't know. I thought it was called like a cookout.
Okay, I just want you to walk with me, right? A cookout, usually a couple of family members or whatever. But if you have a larger cookout with more family members, people coming out of town and whatnot, what do we tend to call that?
Oh, a reunion?
A what?
A family reunion.
A family reunion.
Yeah.
So if you go through the park, Genesee Valley Park, and you see a family reunion, you see a lot of people, generally looking alike. It's the same sort of thing as when the Israelites went into the land of Canaan and they stumbled upon a community, a family reunion of giants. So if you got a black family reunion and an Asian guy show up, they all gonna look like, what you doing here? It's the same as when the Israelites showed up and they turned like, what you doing here? A race, a land of giants, a nation of giants. It ain't just one, it ain't just Goliath. We got to get that out of our head. It was a race of them. Read on.
Giants dwelt therein in old time, and the Ammonites called them Zemzumins.
Okay.
A people great and many and tall as the Anakim.
So this clan of giants were just as numerous and just as tall as the Anakim. So you have the Emim, the Zamzumims, and the Anakim. 3 separate tribes, if you will, great nations of giants, similar in their height and their, the multiplicity or the largeness of their clan, but they're different. Okay? But they all were dwelling at the same time, and they dwelt in certain regions that were nearby. All of these different human tribes were aware of them and had particular names for them. Oh yeah, those are the Emim. They dwell over there. Yeah, those are the Anakim. They dwell. Yeah, leave them alone. They fierce over there. They dwell in the mountains. Because you think about it, this chapter is going into the original abode of these giants, that the Moabites and the Edomites later subdued them, which that's amazing within its own right, that humans were able to overthrow these giants and kick them out and dwell in the mountains. So these giants, their refuge was in the mountains in old time. Before the Moabites and before the Edomites took refuge in Mount Seir and these different other mountain ranges, the giants were dwelling in those mountains. That was their home. So it's just to really just wrap our mind around these things. This is what the scripture is saying. And it keeps emphasizing how tall they were and how many there were. It doesn't just say, yeah, it was just the one guy and he had a couple of giant children. No, it's just saying a whole land of them. Many, a great people. Read.
But the Lord destroyed them before them, and they succeeded them, and dwelt in their stead. And he did to the children of Esau, which dwelt in Seir, as he did to the children of Esau, which dwelt in Seir, when he destroyed the Horims from before them. And they succeeded them, and dwelt in their stead, even unto this day.
Okay, so it's going into that, how the Edomites were able to destroy those Horites, or Horim, that dwelt in Mount Seir before them. So when Esau went to go take that land as a refuge, he had to wipe out these giants. And the Most High God gave Esau and his descendants the might to fight these giants and kill them, because God said, Esau, I'm going to give you this. Just like Canaan was given to us, the Most High said, Esau, you're going to have this. Moab, you're going to have that. And I'm going to give you might to whoop up on these giants. This is what God did. Okay? From there, we're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 3, the next chapter over, and read verses 11 through 13.
Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 11. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of giants.
Okay, now, when we think about that, it's not talking about giants, because sometimes that word giants can be used interchangeably, right? Because remember, in Numbers 13, it says the sons of Anak. So in order to be sons, that means you had to come from Anak. That means you were his offspring, his descendants. He said the sons of Anak, which were a race unto themselves, were giants, but they come from the giants. So there was an ancient race of giants that these sons of Anak and Anak himself sprang from. We have to kind of get that in our head. The sons of Anak and Anak himself sprang from their ancestors, an ancient giant. And many believe that though that ancient race of giants were larger in stature. Okay? They were larger in stature. Now it gets to verse 11 here in Deuteronomy. It says, for only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of giants. Now it can't be meaning giants in the full sense of the word, meaning just tall individual, because much later we have Goliath. So that can't be so. I think it's talking about those ancient giants. He remained of the remnant of those ancient giants. Read on.
Behold, his bedstead was a bedstead of iron.
Bedstead meaning like his bed frame, essentially, what he slept on.
Is not in Rabbath of the children of Ammon? Is it not in Rabbath of the children of Ammon? 9 cubits was the length thereof, and 4 cubits the breadth of it. The breadth of it. Is it breadth or breadth?
Breadth.
The breadth of it. After the cubit of a man.
Okay, the cubit of a man is about 18 inches. Is measuring from a grown man from his elbow to the tip of his middle finger. Typically about 18 inches is a cubit of a man. All right. So it's saying that his bedstead or his bed frame, his bed, Og, king of Bashan, this remnant of the giants, his bed length was 9 cubits in length. Cubit being 18 inches. So if you were to do the math, that's about 13 and a half feet. 13 and a half feet. Let me pull this image up real quick. That, from what I researched, that bed is 13 feet long. Mm-hmm. Okay? They built it for their dogs. That's white people for you.
Yeah, right.
But you see the enormity of that bed. You know what I'm saying? And he dwelt on it. So 13 being the long way. So about 13 feet the long way. And I'm not sure what that is on the side, if that's a part of the bed too or whatever. But that's a big behind bed. You know, and typically if you're dwelling in a bed, you're not dwelling in a bed way, way bigger than you. You're going to dwell in a bed that's about, slightly bigger than what you are. Like little kids dwell in kid-sized twin.
Dwelling in that bed like that, though. For real. You got room to move around. Make sure you don't fall, nothing.
Yeah, but it's interesting because the writer describes the size of his bed and says he is the remnant of the giants. So it's not there for naught, just to say, oh yeah, he was a king, so he had a big luxurious bed. No, I think it's to show how tall he was and how he needed his bed to be especially big. The fact that it needed to be made of iron,
yeah, right,
to hold this big old dude up while he moving and probably got female giants in the bed or whatever he doing. Okay, so it's showing 9 cubits, which is about 13 and a half feet. That was the length of his bed. Read on.
9 cubits. Okay, verse 12. In this land which we possessed at that time for Eror, which is by the river Arnon, in half Mount Gilead, and the cities thereof, gave I unto the Reubenites and to the Gadites. And the rest, what am I reading down?
Up to 13.
Okay. And the rest of Gilead and all Bashan, being the kingdom of Og, gave I unto the half tribe of Manasseh, all the region of Argob, with all Bashan, which was called the land of giants.
So the region that the half tribe of Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben inherited on the other side of Jordan was referred to, according to verse 13, as the land of giants. We gotta. So it wasn't just one. It wasn't just Goliath. Og, king of Bashan, was the king of a race, a nation of giants, and that whole area was their land, the land of the giants. That whole area, the whole area was filled with giants. And so when they went out to war, yeah, they were fighting men of their stature, but a lot of times they were fighting creatures that were taller than them, much taller than them. Okay? From there, we're going to go to 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 4. We talked about Goliath. Let's read about Goliath. The book of 1 Samuel chapter 17 and verse 4.
1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 4. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath of Gath.
So like now Gath, so we just read in Deuteronomy 3 about the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh that dwelled on the other side of Jordan, towards the eastern side of the land of Canaan. Now when we think about Goliath, he said he's from Gath, which is on the coast, the western side of the land of Canaan. So there were giants on the east, there were giants on the west, and there were giants all throughout the land of Canaan. Okay, read.
Whose height was 6 cubits and a span.
6 cubits in a span. So Goliath, right? So this is many centuries since the flood, since the emergence of those great high giants, right? But, and we're going to get into that there in a moment to kind of explain the classifications of giants. There's classifications of giants. All right, but it's saying that Goliath was 6 cubits in a span. A span is about 9 inches, and a cubit, like we mentioned, is about 18 inches. From the elbow of a man to the tip of his middle finger. About 18 inches for a cubit and 9 inches for a span. That will put him about at 9'9" tall. Goliath was about 9'9" tall. Put into perspective, the tallest person in the NBA, if I'm not mistaken, was either Yao Ming or Manute Bull. 7'6" or 7'7". And Goliath was well over 2 feet taller than them. I'm going to show you this image. Let's go right here. Okay? This here is Robert Waldlow. All right? He has the record, the Guinness World Record for being the tallest modern man. He stood at 8'11".
I think he was a Freemason too.
Perhaps he died at the age of 22, right? So this is way back in the day. So the picture to your left, the shorter individual is his father, and that's Robert over on the other side. And guess his age at that time.
Him, the boy, on the right side?
On the left side, standing next to his father, about the same height as him. What do you think? How old do you think Robert is at that age?
Jeez, maybe like 10.
He's 6 years old.
Wow.
He's 6 years old and towering. I wouldn't say tower, but he's taller than his father.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He's clearly taller than his father at 6 years old, getting ready. I believe this picture is him getting ready to go to the first grade.
Wow. That's crazy.
That is crazy. And now the picture on the right is his father yet again, but you see he almost twice as tall as his father, standing at 8'11".
How in the world did that happen?
They say it's a tumorous ailment that he had that causes bones to grow exponentially, right? But something I want us to meditate on is Robert Waldlow, holds the record for the tallest modern person. I say that because if we go into the ancients, there were giants that dwelled upon the earth who were much taller than he was. Mm. Even those that dwelled in times of antiquity within the last 50 to 100 years, that were recorded that were taller than him. Okay? But anyway, he died at the age of 22 because of the tumor. His bones grew in a weird way. He had to walk with a cane. Like, again, he died at 22, so he was a very young man. But he had to walk with a cane. He had trouble moving his limbs and whatnot. Obviously, he had trouble finding clothes that fit him. Being transported certain places. He had there was a specialty bus or something that had to pick him up to take him certain places. And just look at him. This dude is enormous. Yeah. But how tall? If you remember, how tall was Goliath? I just talked about it. How tall was he?
Like 9 cubits or something? No, that was his bed. I don't remember.
In feet, he was 9'9". Goliath was 9'9". So it said he was 6 cubits in a span.
6 cubits in a span.
That would equate to 9 feet and 9 inches. Robert Wadlow was 8'11". So Goliath had 10 inches on this guy.
That's a tall dude, man.
It would be kind of like, so you see the right picture where Wadlow is 6 years old, or 6 years old, and his father is there. It would be like Wadlow is the father and Goliath would be him. Still got some height on him. Still got some height on him. But the thing we have to recognize is, where did we read it at? Let me see. It might have been Numbers. Let's go back there real quick. I'll go back and read it. Let me see. Because it's saying with Robert Wadlow, he died early, and he had issues. Let's see. I'm trying to see where it's at.
Probably was painful for him too, just to move around.
Yeah. It's not here. I'll have to find it. But it talks about the giants being men of great, not only of great stature, but great strength, and they were renowned warriors. Robert Wadlow couldn't fight or do nothing. He could barely stand. The giants of ancient times and the giants of today, because I don't want to get into a mindset of, oh yeah, that was just back then. No, there are giants today. Giants today. These giants were creatures, individuals that had the ability to fight. They were valiant men of war. Right? They could bear the sword. They could run fast. They could jump high. They could lift. You know what I'm saying? So if a strong man, if let's say for instance, thinking Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime could lift all this weight, him being a big, strong individual, just imagine what a giant can do. There's a story I heard just a week or so ago about reports of these soldiers, I think, that were in a remote area, and their vehicle went off the road, and they got out their vehicle and they were trying to go find help or something, and they came across these creatures, and they were afraid, and they hid themselves from the creatures. But they said the creatures were kind of benevolent, and they said they picked up the one of the creatures picked their car up and moved it and put it back on the road. You know what I'm saying? This is the type of stuff that takes place that don't get a lot of press because, again, like we just read about with the Smithsonian, they're stealing these giant bones and destroying them. They want to hide it. They don't want the mainstream science to realize these things. You got to get rid of all this evidence. Okay? But Goliath was 9'9", and the tallest modern man was 8'11", so Goliath had him beat. Okay? From there we're going to go to 2 Samuel chapter 21, verses 18 through 22. Book of 2 Samuel, chapter 21, verses 18 through 22.
2 Samuel, chapter 21, verse 18. And it came to pass after this, that there was again a battle with the Philistines at Gob. Then Sibbeshai, the Hushathite, slew Saph, which was of the sons of the giant.
Okay, so again, we're still seeing these giants. This is later on after Goliath was slayed. After Goliath was slayed, we're still seeing giants in the land. Read.
And there was again a battle in Gob with the Philistines, where Elhanan, the son of Jeroham, a Bethlehemite, slew the brother of Goliath the Gittite.
So Goliath had brothers. He had a family. And he got destroyed. Read.
The staff of whose spear was like a weaver's beam.
Okay, so weaver's beam being like a long instrument to help create textile fabrics. Yeah. So his beam was extraordinarily long. So these are descriptors put in the text to show how big these individuals were. It's not in there for no reason. It's to show, these giants was massive. They still got that work though. No matter how big they was, David and his men still was putting the smackdown on these giants. Mm-hmm. Read.
Verse 20. And there was yet a battle in Gath, where was a man of great stature, that had on that had on every hand 6 fingers.
So, and that's something you hear a lot, that giants typically have 6 fingers per hand and 6 toes per foot, because they're essentially a mutant. Really, they're a mutant because they're not fully human. They have that ancient fallen DNA in them. Yeah, they have some human qualities. You know, they do take on flesh, human flesh, but they have DNA that is not of this world. They are mutants. They are X-Men. Read.
And on every foot 6 toes, 24 in number. And he also was born to the giants. And when he defiled Israel, Jonathan...
Defied.
Oh, Salakia. And when he defied Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shimea... Did I say it right? Shimea?
Mm-hmm.
The brother of David slew him.
So this is David's nephew. David's nephew was whooping up on this giant. What, nigga? You giving him that work. David's nephew was whooping. So David, when he was a lad, whooped up on Goliath, and his nephew whooping up on the brother of Goliath. There were giants in those days, the scripture says. Read.
These 4 were born to the giant in Gath, and fell by the hand of David, and by the hand of his servants.
Okay. From there, we're going to go to the book of Judith, chapter 16 and verse 7. The book of Judith, chapter 16 and verse 7.
Is that not in the...
That's in the Apocrypha, the book of Judith. Book of Judith, chapter 16 and verse 7.
The book of Judith, chapter 16, verse 7. For the mighty one did not fall by the young men.
Salakia, so she's going into how she was able to get victory over the general of the enemy of Israel. She was able to destroy him, and she's talking about it. So we're going to start again at the top of the verse.
For the mighty one did not fall by the young men.
So he wasn't killed by men of the opposing army. That's not how he died. Read.
Neither did the sons of the Titans smite him.
The sons of the Titans? That term Titans isn't used anywhere else in the Old, New, or Apocrypha text at all. Only here in the book of Judith is it used. But Titans? Remember in Numbers 13 it says that the sons of Anak were born of Anak, which were giants, but were born of the giants. There were classifications. There's a lineage of giants. When we think about Greek mythology, because that's where we typically hear that term Titans, gods and the Titans, the Olympians in Greek mythology. But what were the Titans? The Titans were the ancestors of the gods. Kronos and these other Titans gave birth to the Olympian gods. Zeus and Hades and all these other gods. They gave birth to them. And these Titans were larger in stature than the gods were. The gods were larger than humans, but the Titans were larger than them, and they were their parents. Okay? And it talks about how Kronos, these Titans, wanted to eat and consume their baby offspring, the gods. He wanted to eat Zeus, but one of the gods or other Titans or something took Zeus and hid him in a cave so that Kronos couldn't eat him. Because he felt that one day that these gods of his, these offspring, would come of age and overthrow him. So he wanted to eat them to make sure that he wouldn't have anyone to challenge his authority. I brought this up real quick right here. The term Titan was supposed to be a curse or mark thrown at them by their father, Uranus, for overthrowing him. The Olympian gods, unlike the primordial gods or the elder gods, Titans, are not to be overthrown, so that distinguishes them, right? So I pretty much just brought this out because she uses the term Titans. It says sons of the Titans. The Titans are also referred to as the primordial gods or the elder gods, the ancient ones. The ancient ones. I believe these Titans are that original race of offspring from the fallen ones and the daughters of men, the sons of God, that original race. And then as that race began to mate back in with humankind, then you had other less divine but still giant offspring that came from them. So this lineage of giants that were produced after that. Okay? But continue reading that verse 7.
Nor high giants sat upon him, but Judith the daughter of Merari weakened him with the beauty of her countenance.
So Judith talks about it wasn't the young men that destroyed him, it was I, a woman. But she mentions the sons of the Titans or the high giants. These are phrases we don't see anywhere else in the Bible. High giants. So these had to be giants that were of an extraordinary height. And the sons of the Titans. And in Greek mythology, the Titans were the primordial or elder gods. The ancestors of the Olympian gods. And the Olympian gods were tall in stature. But these Titans were even larger in stature. Just something to you know what I'm saying, to meditate on. From there, we're going to go to the book of Baruch, chapter 3, verses 24 through 28. The book of Baruch, chapter 3, verses 24 through 28.
The book of Baruch, chapter 3, verse 24. O Israel, how great is the house of God, and how large is the place of his possession. Great and have none, great and have none in, high and unmeasurable. There were the giants famous from the beginning, that were of so great stature and so expert in war.
So, this is the scripture I actually wanted. So when we think about Robert Wadlow, who was 8'11", who died at age 22 because of complications with his bones, he had to walk with a cane and a walker. He's not of that true ancient. Now, does he got some ancient giant DNA? Maybe. Especially him being Edomite? Yeah, he might very well have it. But they say it was a tumor, giantitis or something like that causes bones to grow. These giants of ancient times, these high giants, these titans, they weren't walking around with a cane where David all he had to do was stick his foot out and they clip over. No, these were great men of war. 26. So, 26, there were the giants famous from the beginning. So they dwelt in the land of Canaan before the Israelites dwelt there. That were of so great stature and so expert in war. They knew how to shoot the bow and arrow. They knew how to use the sword and use the shield. They knew how to kill and destroy. They were efficient warriors and of great stature. Okay, keep going.
Those did not the Lord choose, neither gave he the way of knowledge unto them.
So the Most High God did not choose them. They're an abomination. They're a curse. The fact that they even exist on this planet is a curse. The Most High did not choose them as his chosen race. He chose the Israelites. But read.
But they were destroyed because they had no wisdom and perished through their own foolishness.
Okay.
Stupid giants.
Yeah, stupid giants. There you go. From there, we're going to go to the book of Enoch, chapter 7. And we're going to start in verse 1 and 2, and then 7, and then 10 through 15.
What chapter again?
The book of Enoch, chapter 7. I'm going to start with verses 1 and 2, 7, and then 10 through 15.
The book of Enoch, chapter 7, verse 1. It happened after the sons of men had multiplied in those days, that daughters were born to them, elegant and beautiful. And when the angels, the sons of heaven, beheld them, they became enamored of them, saying to each other, Come, let us select for ourselves wives from the progeny of men, and let us beget children.
Okay, so this is that sin that took place in the beginning. They said, let's go down and take wives of the daughters of men. Jump down to verse 7.
Verse 7. Then they swore all together, and all bound themselves by mutual execrations.
Meaning curses.
Their whole number was 200 who descended upon Ardis, which is the top of Mount Armon.
Okay, so you know what's kind of interesting? We talked about how the Emims, the Zamzuzims, and the Anakims, they dwelt in the mountains, right? And how the Edomites and Moabites had to come and remove them and overthrow them and take them out. Mm. You think to yourself, well, why do these giants have such an affinity for the mountains? Why do they like dwelling up there? Maybe because their ancient ancestors, those fallen ones, came down on that mountain. Mm. That's where they touched down at. That's where they made this oath and say, yo, we all gonna stick together. Ain't nobody gonna rat each other out. We're gonna go down here and take these women, do our thing, and then let the chips fall where they may. That might be a reason why they have such an affinity for mountains. It goes back to those ancient ones, dwelling on high. Could be. That's why perhaps the high places, read about the scripture of the high places where they go and build these altars and high groves in the mountains and the high hills. It might be that affinity. The higher you go, the higher you feel your understanding and these spirits and entities that dwell upon high. You want to feel like you're drawing closer to them, perhaps. I don't know. Just something throwing it out there.
That's a good thought, though.
And then we're going to jump to verse 10 from 10 to 15.
Verse 10. Then they took wives, each choosing for himself, whom they began to approach, and with whom they cohabited.
So I want us to pay close attention to this, because we're talking about giants, but we're going to start to branch off a little bit from just the giants and talk about these quote unquote beasts or monsters that are also a byproduct of when these fallen ones made it with the daughters of men. But you're seeing here, they cohabitated, meaning so these angels that took on a form lived and dwelt in the house with these women. The women was cooking them dinner and whatever. They lived together.
Was they cooking these giants?
They were living together. Well, this is before the giants, right? This is the fallen ones and the women. They cohabited. Then eventually the offspring were born to them, right? But let's keep reading it up. Let's start with verse 10 from the top.
Okay. Then they took wives, each choosing for himself whom they began to approach, and with whom they cohabited, teaching them sorcery, incantations, and the dividing of roots in trees.
So these fallen ones taught their wives witchcraft. They taught them sorcery, incantation, and the dividing of roots in trees. When you go into voodoo, right? If you mess around with a girl and she's talking about dividing roots, you better go the other way. She's getting into that witchcraft. Now, there are some things that you can go into that are holistic and are healthy and are lawful, but then there's some other things that you get into dealing with plants and herbs that you need to stay away from, because there are certain spirits attached to, especially if there's spells, you know what I'm saying, that you recite that bind this or release that and summon this and summon that, and like, nah, bruh, I'm staying away from that. No, drink that. Where'd you get that from? The backyard? Yeah, I'm good. I'll go give you some Burger King or something. I'm not having none of that. Okay? Yeah, you don't want none of that spaghetti sauce. You know what I'm saying? But read on.
Verse 11. And the women conceiving brought forth giants.
So these women, these women from ancient times that made it with those original 200 fallen one on Mount Hermon, it talks about. So they was up there. They say, look, bruh. This is what we're going to do. We're going to go down. We're going to mess with these women. And we all in on it, right? Ain't nobody going to rat each other out, right? We all in on this? All right, cool. Which one you want? I want her over there. All right. So they went down there. They made it with these women. They cohabitated. She conceived. She got impregnated and gave birth to giants. There was a woman like in South America or something like that where she gave birth to a baby, and this baby was like massive. This baby looked like a... Yeah. I'll have to see if I can put it up there, if I can find it or something. It was crazy. Read on.
Verse 12. Whose stature was each 300 cubits. These devour all which the labor of men produced, until it became impossible to feed them.
Okay.
When they turned themselves against men in order to devour them, and began to endure birds, beasts, reptiles, and fishes, to eat their flesh one after another.
You said endure, it means injure. Verse 14, it began to injure birds, beasts, reptiles.
That's what I meant to say. Why did I say it like that? But yeah, let me get that again. And began to injure birds, beasts, reptiles, and fishes, to eat their flesh one after another, and to drink their blood. Then the earth reproved the unrighteous.
Okay. So it's saying that these giants were born from the women that made it with the fallen ones. And verse 12, it says that they were 300 cubits and it was impossible to feed them. Now, there was something that I actually sent to you that I'm going to try to read now, which talks about that verse 12 being a corruption of the translation, and it actually says it a little differently. It actually doesn't talk about it being 300 cubits at all. It talks about it being something different. Let me pull that up here in a moment. Myth. The giants were hundreds, if not thousands of feet tall. How tall were the pre-flood giants really? Actually, the book of Enoch originally probably did not say how tall the giants were. Contrary to Charles, Scode, and Lawrence, Enoch 7 and 2 contains a scribal corruption in the Ethiopic, referring to Enoch 7 and 12, what we just read. Sometimes the translation's different of the verses, but that's what it's referring to. On this point, I agree with some modern textual scholars that the Greek version of Enoch 7 and 2, or Enoch 7 and 12 in this case, is closer to the original. Nicolsberg Vanderkam translates verse 2 from a Greek text which says nothing about the height of the giants. Quote, verse 2 in their translation reads, "And they conceived from them and bore to them great giants, and the giants begot Nephilim, and to the Nephilim were born Eliud, and they were growing in accordance with their greatness." So this is kind of going into that classification of the giants, that they were great giants, or perhaps the titans that Judah talked about, then the high giants, and then the remnant of those giants that came after. The great giants, the Nephilim, and then the Eliud. Okay? There's something to keep in mind when we're reading that. But then it also talks about how these giants, regardless of the classification, that it became impossible for them to be fed properly, and they were injuring birds. Now, it's weird that it say injure them, because if they were eating them, then they were just eating them. They were consuming them, but it says injure them. You're going to keep reading a couple of other texts and just see what the language is trying to say. So from there, we're going to go to the book of Yasher, chapter 36, verse 31 through 34. The book of Yasher, chapter 36, verses 31 through 34.
The book of Yasher, chapter 36, verse 31. "And afterward, about 120 great and terrible animals came out from the wilderness at the other side of the sea. And they all came to the place where the asses were, and they placed themselves there."
So 120 of some strange creatures came out and made themselves known. Keep going.
"And those animals, from their middle downward, were in the shape of the children of men. And from their middle upward, some had the likeness of bears, and some..."
Salakia. So among these 120 strange creatures, he said some of them, from their waist downward, had legs like a man. Feet, toes, skin. But then from their waist up, they were in the similitude of a bear. Do we see anything like that dwelling on the earth? No. Sort of like that? You know what I'm saying? We don't see anything like that. From the waist down is a man, and from the waist up is a bear. Read. Just start with 32 at the top.
Okay, I just found where I was at, but yeah. "And those animals from their middle downward were in the shape of the children of men, and from their middle upward some had the likeness of bears, and some the likeness of the kephas."
Okay. The kephas, they're not really sure what kephas are, but let me see if I have the picture here. This right here, at least, is kind of fuzzy on that side, but it's showing like half, like bear or lion in humanoid shape. Okay? All right, and then that might be part of maybe the kephas, the one on the other side right next to this one right here with the helmet on.
Yes.
That could perhaps be the kephas. But it's going to kind of explain what it looked like a little bit. But these were hybrid creatures. Where did they come from? They came out of this cave and they were looking to eat some food. And the I believe it was a goat herder or whatever he was. He saw him like, what in the world is that? He ain't never saw that before. They all came out ready to eat. He said, let me get out of here before I beat a meal.
Right.
Finish reading.
"With tails behind them from between their shoulders reaching down to the earth, like the tails of the Duchepeth. And these animals came and mounted and rode upon these asses."
So these animals were
Ride horses.
Yeah, so but they were up. Obviously, they were upright like a man. It said that some of them had so they weren't on all fours, but they had tails, long tails from their shoulder all the way down. That's crazy. Now we don't know what the Duchiptas and the Kifas are. These are unknown creatures, but they sure enough was looking crazy according to this description. And they had the ability to ride on a donkey. Mm-hmm. Keep going.
And these animals came and mounted and rode upon these asses and led them away, and they went away unto this day. And one of these animals approached Anah and smote him with his tail, and then fled from that place.
So it came and hit him and then ran away. Okay? Keep going.
And when he saw this work, he was exceedingly afraid of his life, and he fled and escaped to the city.
Now, you know what's kind of interesting with this story? No one else is there but him. That sounds like a lot of the different stories you hear of seeing these mythological, quote-unquote, mythological creatures. They're I saw this thing out there. I was out fishing, and I saw this crazy... Bruh, stop lying. You got evidence? Nah, because I was so scared I didn't... Yeah, you lying, bruh. Stop capping. How do you think he felt when he went back to the city and told all the inhabitants, I saw these creatures? Man, stop, man. Where them horses, where them asses at? Where them donkeys at? They rode on them and took them. You like, wait, hold on. So you can tell me some half man, half bear creature came out of the cave and rode the donkeys away? I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's what happened. Man, get out, man. You drunk with wine, ain't you? Get out of here, man. Go ahead with that foolishness. All right, from there we're going to go to Yasher, chapter 61, and read verses 15 and 16. So Yasher, chapter 61, and we're going to read verses 15 and 16.
In Zepho, Yasher 61, verse 15. And Zepho went, and he saw, and behold, there was a great cave at the bottom of the mountain, and there was a great stone there at the entrance of the cave. And Zepho split the stone, and he came into the cave. And he looked, and behold, a large animal was devouring the ox. From the middle upward it resembled a man, and from the middle downward it resembled an animal. And Zepho rose up against the animal and slew it with his sword.
Salakia, so you said you saw Anah that got whooped on by one of these strange creatures when it hit him with his tail, but he said it was in the appearance of the Kifas and the Duchiptas. We don't know what that is, but it described one of them having tail, a long tail going down, and half from the waist down was like a man, and from the waist up was like a bear, and it was able to ride on a donkey. Now this one, upward was like a man, and down was like an animal. It doesn't describe which animal, but what does that kind of sound like to me? Let me see. Let me pull this up real quick. That sounds really close to this right here. The centaur. Mm-hmm. A part of Greek mythology. The upward part is as a man. The bottom part is a horse. And there's other creatures that are similar to that, and other...
Like the ones from Narnia, that one creature who was upward, he had the body of a man, but downward he had, I don't know, maybe like the body of a goat or something.
That's actually a satyr. We're going to get to that in a moment. But with like the satyr, typically when you see them, there's different depictions, but sometimes they're more human looking, they're more goat looking in the face. Like usually with this the centaur, the upper body of a man, there's like no animalistic features. He looks entirely like a man. So like almost like if you covered the bottom, he would look perfectly like a man. It was like there were no large ears or horns or nothing. He looked perfectly like a man, but then the bottom is a horse. So it appears it was that way. But he was eating an oxen. So he's eating a bovine or whatever, a calf or whatever, eating this oxen. And typically, if that's taking place, and because it refers to it as an animal, he slew the animal. Now this thing was part human, but the scripture calls it an animal. And it's eating this thing. So it probably was not cooking it. It was eating raw meat. How demonic and evil would that be? You go into a dark cave and you got a little torch. You go in there, you see a half man, half animal thing with its face down in the carcass of some animal, and it puts his head up and blood all on its face. What do you want? Oh, yeah, bro, it's time to get up out of here. You know what I'm saying? It's got its head down, so you think it's an animal. What animal is that? It's pretty, what is that? What you doing in my cave, nigga? Oh, I'm about to leave. Don't even worry about it. No, you next. You dessert. You know what I'm saying? So this is what it makes me think of. The centaur of Greek mythology. The upper half is a man. The bottom half is a horse. Here it describes it as an animal, right? But it slew it. So, well, let's keep reading, and then I'm gonna go into the point I had. But keep reading through verse 16.
Verse 16. And the inhabitants of the Shittim heard of this thing, and they rejoiced exceedingly. And they said, what shall we do unto this man who has slain this animal that devoured our cattle?
So this creature terrorized the people of Chittim, and they made Zepho a hero for killing this thing. You think back to Disney's versions of Hercules, how when he killed, I believe it was a centaur, and these other little monsters, the inhabitants of the town made Hercules a hero because he was killing that. You know, it's just funny that all these different little parallels. But, and then I want to bring this out too. Let me get rid of that.
I remember him fighting the dragon, the three-headed dragon.
Yeah, the Hydra. But when he started off, Megra, the girl that he liked, there was the centaur.
Was it a blue looking?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That he fought in the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first one he fought. Let me pull this up real quick. Let's see. Where's it at? Oh, I already had it up there. What's this? Pull this up real quick. North American cryptids. These are the mythological creatures that have been reported throughout North America. If you look over in the Pacific Northwest, up near Washington and Oregon, you have Sasquatch. But even in Florida, you have the swamp ape. Right here, you have the Mongolian monster, the beast of Bray Road. You know, you have the Polic monster. You have the Ozark howler. You have all these creatures that ape-like humanoid hairy creature. You know, any of these sort of things, though, Wendigo here in Canada, the Dover demon, the Jersey devil, the Scope ogre, the Lake Worth monster in Texas, the Chupacabra in Mexico, all these, the Shunka Warrican here in Idaho looks like, or Montana rather, all of these different creatures, the Frogman of Michigan, Mothman of West Virginia, all of these creatures have that sort of look. All these North American creatures that dwell either in caves, in the mountains, or deep in the woods. And they come out and they eat cattle, they eat your dog, they eat deer, and you'll find these mutilated animals on the side of the road like, they don't look like roadkill, bruh. The body is chewed up over here, the head way down the street. You know what I'm saying? Like, this looked like somebody came and did something crazy with this animal. And they describe him being upright and looking sort of like a man, but being really hairy and all these other features. Similar to what we're reading in the book of Yasher in chapter 34, with those creatures that came out of that cave. And in chapter 61, we went in and saw this thing eating oxen. Half man, half animal. He said, you know what? I got some for your behind. And cut him up and said, I don't know what you is, but I got to kill you. Okay? From there, let's go. Actually, I was supposed to bring this out before. Let's go to Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 through 7, and then 11 through 12. Now, something I want to bring back up, because when we read in Enoch chapter 7, the latter part of the verses we read, it talks about verse 14, that these creatures, these giants that were born, that were impossible to feed, it says, and began to injure birds beasts, reptiles, fish, and eat their flesh one after another, and to drink their blood. And then the earth will prove the unrighteous. It's interesting that they mention injure them and not eating them. Many believe that this is some of the evil, what do you even want to call this, creations that came about by way of the giants. Animal splicing. Like, so how did these half man, half animal hybrid creatures come about? Many believe it was some sort of mating or creation of the giants, humans, and animals blended together to make these creatures. How else would it come about? Because if a man has sex with a woman, if a man has sex with an animal, or vice versa, an animal has sex with a woman, they're not going to create a hybrid creature. It's not going to happen. It will be a confusion, it'll be perversion and abomination, but that animal will not produce of that kind. It's impossible. So how else, if these scriptures are true, how else will these half man, half animal beasts come to fruition? How can these cryptids of North America be true and be real, that people have reported on and show sometimes footage of? You remember when we were at the dojo last year? We showed a footage of Chupacabra chewing on that goat, and they were beating it with a stick, and it slithered away, and it looked like no snake though. It was jet black, and it was looked like winged, and it slithered away. What is that? Okay. So yeah, in Enoch 7 it talks about injuring these birds and beasts and reptiles and fish. I believe that's what began that animal splicing where you begin to see these half-breed creatures. But we're going to go and read Genesis chapter 6 verses 5 through 7 and then 11 and 12.
Genesis chapter 6 verse 5. And God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man from whom I have created, from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them.
Okay, so again, like with Enoch chapter 7, even the animals were becoming corrupted and polluted. Well, why? The animals didn't do anything wrong, at least that we would think. There has to be a reason as to why these animals had to be vanquished off the earth. These animals are even polluted. I can't even deal with this. This is not my original creation. They're polluted somehow. They got to get wiped off. Now from there we're going to jump to verse 11 and 12.
Verse 11. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all the flesh had corrupted his ways upon the earth.
So, yeah, we generally think about this in terms of man, but it said all flesh, meaning including the animals, had corrupted themselves. It was corrupted. It was perverted. He had to get rid of all of it. He had to get rid of all of it. Okay?
Shalom. Thank you for watching part 1 of the lesson. Stay tuned for part 2.